let me say something that all of you know. Maybe the kids from Point Loma High don't know, but their parents certainly do, that Rob Reiner first captured America's attention with his award-winning portrayal of Michael, Archie's nemesis, in All in the Family. Many of us grew up to that. I was a little older, so I was there the whole time. He has gone on to direct some of the most memorable films, including, and this is just a smattering of them, Stand By Me, When Harry Meets Sally, we all remember that scene in the delicatessen. A Few Good Men, and many, many others. Soon will be released, as I understand it, Rumor Has It, with Kevin Costner, Jennifer Aniston, and Shirley MacLaine. We are looking forward to that. But more importantly for us today, and for us in California, Rob has been one of America's leaders on public policy issues ranging from, as you heard, early child development to environmental protections. He and his wife founded the I Am Your Child Foundation, now called Parents Action for Children, to promote the importance of early child development. Approximately 1998, Rob led the fight to pass Proposition 10, about which we have heard, which now provides, through the First Five California, over $600 million each year to early childhood development services. I can say that this is a program that clearly, without Rob's leadership, never would have happened, and for that we are greatly indebted to him. I think we're going to be indebted to him again soon. And the program that you're about to hear, the initiative you're about to hear about, is one that some of us feel very strongly about, even though it may cost some of us a little bit of money. I am pleased and privileged to introduce a person who is clearly not a meathead, Rob Reiner.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Murray. You're officially the second person today to call me meathead. There's somebody over here who was yeah, there we are. He asked me, does anybody ever call you meathead? And I say, you're the first today. Now, we've got a second. Thank you very much, Murray. And George, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. When I first saw George before we came in, I said, how do you feel? He said, well, how would you feel if you were 70 years old and you still played in a baseball league where people threw 80 miles an hour and you got a double off the wall? I said, I'd feel pretty good. I'd feel pretty. And he has that name, too. Batting in the number 3 position, number 7. First baseman, George Mitrovich. Murray, can you claim that you can hit an 80-mile-an-hour fastball?
I couldn't when I was 17.
There we go. But George can still hit an 80-mile-an-hour fastball, and for that, you are my idol. Forget the public civic duty stuff. Forget throw that out. An 80-mile-an-hour fastball, that's my idol right there. I can't even bend down for a ball anymore. Anyway, thank you very much for having me. I want to talk to you today about something that I think is critical for the future of this state. And I want to tell you a little bit about how I got to it. You know, we're looking at a lot of problems in this state. We know there's problems with infrastructure. We see it every day, physical infrastructure and human infrastructure. And one of the things that we talk about, you know, and it was number 1 on our agenda back in 2000. It has never been anything but number 1 on the agenda here in California, and that is our education system. And I want to tell you about why the initiative, which is called Preschool for All, and it is going to be hopefully on our June ballot next June, which will provide a high-quality preschool education for all 4-year-olds in the state, and why it's so critical. Because people ask me the question, they say, why preschool and why now? And I'll tell you why. As was pointed out, I passed a ballot initiative back in 1998. It was Proposition 10. It gave birth to the First Five Commission, which provides services, as was talked about, for young children 0 to 5, health care, child care, parent education, and preschool in many cases. And I was asked by Governor Davis to chair the initiative, to chair the commission that oversaw the initiative, $600 million a year. And when I took that job, which was back in January of 1999, seven years ago, I went to my first meeting in Sacramento. I sat there with this group of commissioners, and there was a big group in the audience, and I said, I'm an actor. I'm an actor, and today I'm going to act like a commissioner. And hopefully someday I will become a commissioner. And I think in the last 7 years, there's been a very steep and tough learning curve, but I have become. I've made it my job and my business to understand the inner workings of this state, to understand the services delivered to young children, to understand how they're done, the types of programs that are needed, and what all is needed to make it better for young children in this state. But what became very clear to me is that, you know, it sounds like a lot of money, $600 million, but the fact of the matter is, for a state the size of California, it's a small amount of money, and I knew it was a small amount of money, but there had been no investment in young children in this state of any significant size, and my hope was, knowing that I was tied to a revenue stream, which was increased tobacco taxes, that was a diminishing revenue stream and wouldn't be there forever. The hope was that I could put some programs in place on the ground, get the public to understand how critical these programs were in terms of children's success in school and later on in life, and then at some point we would have a statewide effort to put real money into the programs to ultimately change the way we invest in young children. We know, based on all the research, it's not arguable anymore that earliest experiences a child has, the earliest experiences vis-a-vis parents, caregivers, and teachers has a profound effect on how a child's brain organizes and how that child will function later on in life. The biggest bang for the buck we can get in terms of success in school, success in business, success in our workforce, lowering crime rates, lowering welfare dependency occurs when you make an investment early on. We have longitudinal studies to back that up. We know it for a fact. So I said, okay, we've got to get these programs in place. We've got to get people interested and understand how to do it. And as I went along, it became very clear to me that we had a danger of being a mile wide and an inch deep. That means if we invested in too many different types of programs, we wouldn't have the kind of impact that we need to have on this state to galvanize the public to make this real serious investment. So as time went by, it became clear to me that we got to focus on school readiness. We got to focus on the programs that will make a child ready to enter school and ready to succeed. And we looked at what programs are the best to do that. And there's lots of different strategies you can use, and there are a lot of wonderful programs going on around the state. Here in San Diego County, I was talking with a gentleman over here who's part of the San Diego First Five Commission, talked about investing in health care, making sure that every young child had health insurance. We looked at the state as a whole, and we said the two big ticket items are preschool and health insurance. If every child in this state could have preschool and every child in this state was healthy, physically healthy, we know that that child can enter school ready to succeed. And the benefits of that are extraordinary. And I want to talk to you about how extraordinary. When Senator Dee Dee Albert, who you all know, she's from here, from San Diego. As a matter of fact, I just met with her a couple of days ago, last week in my office. She came to me about another project that she's starting to embark on home visitation, which is very exciting, and we're going to help fund a study to see how we can do that. But she came to me a couple of years ago because she was impaneled by the state legislature to create a master plan for public education. Her idea was that if we created this master plan like we did with higher education many, many years ago, if you remember, there was a master plan for higher education that gave birth to our UC system, which is one of the best university systems in the country, if not the best. And that was implemented over a course of many years. A lot of work had to be done in order to get that done, but it did get done. We looked at our education, our public education system, K through 12, and it was falling apart. It was not providing us with the farm system, if you will, the feeder system into our upper education system so that we could produce the workforce that we need to compete in a global economy. She came to us, and the reason she came to us at First Five is that when she did all of her outreach, all of her meetings with stakeholders, she did town hall meetings throughout the state of California. Everywhere she went, they said, how are you going to fix the K through 12 system if you don't have an early education component? Because they had not initially thought about it other than K through 12. She, at that point, came to us at First Five, and I've been commissioner of First Five since, like I said, January of '99, and said, would you put together a working group to create the early education component to our master plan? We went and did that. We then provided the state legislature with the master plan for public education. It's on record, you can look at it. And a big component, the big linchpin at the beginning was every child should have a high quality preschool education. And so I looked at what I've been doing and I said, you know, we've been investing in preschool in a number of counties around the state, Los Angeles, San Mateo, San Francisco, Alpine, a number of places. But in order for us to take the really big step towards fixing our education system, we've got to provide preschool. It's not even arguable. The jury is in on this. We've seen longitudinal studies up and down, you know, from Georgia to Chicago to the Perry preschool, and everyone shows the same thing. For every dollar you put in, you get anywhere from $7 to $17 back. That's for at-risk students. We then had the Rand Corporation come and do a study for all of California. And we said, first of all, this can't be a program just for kids at risk. If we're going to fix our education system, this has to be for everybody. It has to be for middle class, for working class, for everybody. And they did a study that showed that every dollar you put into high-quality preschool brings back $2.62. For that in reduced education, remedial education costs, reduced crime cost, reduced cost on welfare dependency, increased tax base. It's a tremendous investment. We looked at that and we said, okay, this is something we need to do, but how are we going to go about doing it? I don't believe in unfunded mandates. I believe if you're going to do something, you've got to fund it. I went to the Packard Foundation. I said, you've got to help us. You're going to help us fund an exploratory committee and a drafting policy committee so that we can come up with legislation that is truly inclusive, that is truly competitive, that gives parents choice, that looks at all the various policy parameters that we need to look at and comes up with the best public policy. They did that, and for a year, for 1 year, I've been working, reaching out to stakeholders. We've been holding hearings like you would if you were part of the legislature. We've gone to groups all over the state. And what we did, we realized that unless we put business leaders, union leaders together at a table, we were not going to craft something that would work for everyone. So we did it, and it was tough. It was tough. There were a lot of fights. There was a lot of, you know, back and forth. But what I said was, here's the deal. I'm the honest broker here. I have no dog in the hunt. I don't care how we do this as long as it's good for 4-year-olds. As long as this is good public policy for 4-year-olds, and as long as this provides high-quality preschool for 4-year-olds, throw your ideas out on the table. That was the idea, and we have 4 criteria. It has to be universal. Everybody has to have access to it. It has to be fully funded. I don't believe in unfunded mandates. It has to be high quality because it's no good unless it is high quality. And it has to be a mixed delivery system, a multi-pronged delivery system, meaning competitive, making sure that the best ideas for how to deliver it. Listen, if we're going to have an opportunity to start beginning to fix the public education system, let's, and we have the slate is wiped clean, let's do it from the ground up and be smart about it. I realized back when I was campaigning to defeat a repeal effort on Prop 10, that this is about education. This is about the most important thing in the infrastructure of our state. And I said, where is the education system? Why do we have one? Why is it here to begin with? And I talked to business leaders and I said, you business leaders, You're the ones that we have a public education system. You're why it's here, because way back when we moved from a rural agrarian society to an industrial society, it was clear we needed better educated workers to hold down the more sophisticated, complicated factory jobs. So we created the public education system. Now we're at that same point where we're moving from the industrial age into the high-tech information age, and again, we need a better education system to give workers a chance to hold down those high-tech jobs. And so if we have an opportunity, and by the way, if we were to start an education system today, wipe the slate clean, what would it look like? There's no question it would have a preschool component. That's not arguable. Everybody understands that. So that's something I have some portfolio in. I have something I can offer in this. I have some knowledge and wisdom because I've spent a lot of time in these programs for the last 7 years. Let's get that part of it done, and that'll go a long way towards beginning to fix public education. So I put all these people at a table. I had business leaders, I had labor leaders, and they went at it. And it was an interesting dynamic that was created, because if somebody put something out there that would look like they were overreaching, that was something that was just in their parochial interest, that was like a power grab, the other side would tamp them down. And so we had this little balancing, dancing act. People walked away from the table, they came back. But over the course of time, we crafted what I believe is one of the most profound pieces of legislation in the history of this state. And the reason for that is, not only will it provide high-quality preschool for every 4-year-old in the state, but it is a template for how we can start coming together in this state to really fix the problems that we have in this state. They're enormous, and we're not going to get them fixed by hanging on to parochial interests on either side. We've got to come together. This is the way to do it. So, we've created this legislation. We went through, it's scrubbed, it's detailed, it does the 4 things that I said it was going to do. We've gone through the Leg Counsel's office. They said it's one of the best written pieces of legislation they've ever seen. We ran it by the Leg Analyst's office before we filed with the Attorney General, and they said this does everything you say it does. And they gave us a wonderful analysis. Now we're out for signatures. We started about a month ago, a little less than a month ago, and we're doing very well. We're hoping to gather the prerequisite signatures to get it on the ballot in June. We need your help to do that. But more importantly, we need to pass it. We need to pass it because this is the beginning of what we can do as Californians. You folks down in San Diego, I'm going to meet later with the San Diego Chamber of Commerce. I've already gotten the endorsement of the LA Chamber of Commerce. And this is interesting because I set forth, like I said, the idea to bring labor and union together. And we've already got the endorsement of the biggest union in the state, which is the SEIU, and the LA Chamber of Commerce. Now, that's an unusual combination of people. You have never seen it. Now, the LA Chamber of Commerce, for those who don't know, have never, now the funding stream, and I said it has to be fully funded, the funding stream is going back to the old Pete Wilson, Ronald Reagan tax structure. That's how we're going to do it. We're going to raise income taxes on couples making over $800,000 a year and individuals making over $400,000 a year. And the LA Chamber of Commerce realized how critical this was to their future workforce. So they came on board, and we have the SEIU together. Now, how unusual for the LA Chamber? In their 117-year history, they have never, ever endorsed an income tax increase. This is the first time in 117 years that they've done that. And they did it with Democrats and very conservative Republicans. Both. As a matter of fact, 2 of the most conservative Republicans on the LA Chamber were our biggest advocates and lobbying like crazy at the end of the day for this thing. And the reason, like I say, is because they understood how profound this was for the future economy of this state. We're not going to be able to compete in a global marketplace unless we have that educated workforce. That's why this is important. I've already addressed the San Francisco Chamber, the Long Beach Chamber. I've talked to some members of the State Chamber, and I will continue to talk with them. And we are going to bring this coalition together. And now we have Mayor Reardon and Mayor Villaraigosa. We've got Bob Lowe, who's a very conservative Republican businessman, and we've got Warren Hellman, he's probably middle of the road, moderate businessman from San Francisco. Eli Broad, who is, he's a Democrat, but he's fairly conservative Democrat, is on board. We've got Sheriff Lee Baca. We've got law enforcement, we've got the education community, we've got business, we've got labor, and it's building a very broad, strong coalition. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity. We have big, powerful people throughout this state. Down here in San Diego, in Los Angeles, up in the Silicon Valley, Sacramento, and then the Bay Area. The whole state needs to come together on this, because if we can get this passed the way I know we can, this is the first step towards fixing our education system. So thank you very much for allowing me to talk to you, and I'll take a couple of questions, and it doesn't have to be about this. It could be about sex, religion, politics, whatever you want, but make them good. Thank you.
I'll ask the first.
Share with us the evolution or the transition in your personal life from an accomplished actor, accomplished director, from a very famous family, to a person involved in politics, obviously with a social conscience.
That's a good question. I think that as a child growing up, I mean, my formative years were in the 50s and the 60s. And the 60s was a very, wild time in America. It was politically, socially, in every other way. And my parents were very outspoken with respect to the civil rights movement, the war in Vietnam, the women's movement at the time. And that's what I heard around my dinner table. It was always discussions about policy and what was happening in the world. My mother was part of a group called Another Mother for Peace, which was an anti-war group during that time. My father marched in a moratorium. They were involved in civil rights movement and helping get civil rights legislation passed. So these are kind of things I heard all my life growing up as a kid. So it's always been something that has been interesting to me. And as a kid growing up, you always want to say, well, how can you make a difference? Where's your role? What can you do to actually, affect things? And as I got older, to be totally honest, this is very personal, which is I went through some tough times in my life. I went to therapy like many people do, and it became very clear during that period. No great revelation, but earliest experiences of my life had a profound effect on how I functioned, whether it was with friends or members of the opposite sex, colleagues in the workplace. I could see how these things played out, and I realized that there was a direct correlation between earliest experiences and how I functioned as an adult. And I looked at, when I had finally gotten married the second time, my wife, we were watching television, and there were all these shootings. Kids shot people up at school, and there was a shooting at McDonald's. And we always saw the same stories where people would come on and say, oh, he was a choir boy, he was the sweetest boy. He was always so polite. I can't imagine this have happened. And I said, there's a disconnect here. Something happened to this child along the way where he didn't get what he needed in some way, and he's acting out now against society. And I knew there was a direct correlation towards, whether or not there was abuse, neglect, physical, emotional, or any kind of abuse, or some kind of neglect that allowed that kid to get off course. I understood that instinctively, and I said, there's got to be a way we can start making a connection between earliest experiences and social outcomes. I called Tipper Gore up just because I heard she was interested in mental health issues. This is back in '94. I went to Washington, and she allowed me to meet with some of the members of the Department of Education. And at that time, the Clintons' education goals, 2000, had just come out. And the first goal was every child enters school with a readiness to learn. And then there were all these other goals. And I said, it seems to me if we could meet that first goal, then all these other goals would kind of take care of themselves. And she said, well, you're talking about 0 to 3 or early childhood education. And I said, yes. I went then and did a research project to find out what was going on around the country in these things. And I've realized if I could get every child to enter school ready to succeed and ready to perform well in school, that would take care of not only their educational needs, but a whole host of social issues like drug abuse and child abuse and welfare dependency and teen pregnancy and all of these things that we're trying to focus in on. And that's when it became clear what the mission was, that my instincts about investment in young children and the outcomes that you could have started to coalesce. And then I started doing research around the country and bringing different people together, and that gave birth to Prop 10 and then beyond that. But everything comes from our investment in young kids. And this is important. You know, you hear this all the time. You hear politicians all the time will say, you know, children are our future, they're our most important resource. You hear it all the time. But when it comes to making an investment, a real investment, they don't do it. They don't really do it. And the reason they don't do it is because most politicians are working in 2, 4, and 6-year cycles. And the investment you make in young children is not going to show up necessarily on their watch. It's going to show up 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And longitudinal studies bear this out. Bear this out. So who's speaking for young kids? They don't have a vote. You know, there's nobody to organize them. So somebody has to speak out, especially when you know the immutable truth that if you invest in young kids, it has a tremendous effect on the future. And so that's what I decided to focus my energy on. And what happens is you realize it spokes out at everything. I mean, it's into education, it's into the environment, it's into healthcare. It spokes out into a lot of the issues that we care about. So we can give children the right start, give them what they need. And I remember meeting with Carol Rasko, who was President Clinton's chief domestic policy advisor in the first term. She had a little saying on her wall: how does this policy affect children? Everything that she realized that we have to look at every piece of legislation and how does it affect children. If it's good for young kids, if it's good for them, ultimately it's going to be good for society down the road. So that's the way I approach things. A long-winded answer, but hopefully not too boring. Yeah.
Before we go to the floor for a couple of questions, share with us your relationship with.
Was that a curveball or a fastball that you hit? The 80.
It was a change of pace.
A change up. Okay. So I don't feel so bad.
Change up, right?
Sorry, it wasn't.
Share with us your relationship with the governor.
Well, I have a good relationship with the governor. I was going to say Arnold, you know, but you know, I've known him for a long time. As a matter of fact, his three youngest, he has 4 kids, I have 3 kids, but all my 3 kids and his 3 youngest kids all went to the same preschool. They were all in the same classes. We have the same kids exactly the same age. They're all in the same classrooms together. So we've had many conversations about the importance of high quality preschool. Now, he can afford it, I can afford it. A lot of people can't afford it. It's expensive to send kids to high-quality preschool. So for people who are making the money that we do, it's not a problem. For others, it is a problem. So he always recognized the importance and the validity of it. But we have a good relationship, and you know, I've talked to him about this. Hopefully, you know, he's made a pledge not to raise taxes. So, you know, my instinct, I don't know where he'll be on this, but hopefully he'll support it, because hopefully he'll see the same wisdom that the LA Chamber does and many other business leaders do.